Welcome to 2 Hours No Traffic, a New York, Philadelphia sports podcast brought to you by Sideline Sports. I am your host, Spen Harris. Normally, I'm joined by my guy, Philly Brandon. Today, Brandon has the night off, and I am joined by NBA gambling expert Chris Sheridan. Chris, how the hell are you, man?
I'm doing good. It's come to that, huh? NBA gambling expert. I know a few things about the NBA as well, but I roll in the gambling world, gambling journalism world, because it's popping right now, and there's a lot of opportunity there, and especially in New York, where it just came online in January. There's just the companies. The companies that are trying to take advantage of this space, both in the gambling sector financially and in the sports gambling journalism sector. It's really it's something to see. So I'll be back covering the NBA full time before long, though, brother.
There you go. Well, listen, I know you're a gambling guy. This episode is going to be a heavy gambling episode. Brandon and I, Philly Brandon, my co-host, we tried the gambling bit for a while, and we were really bad at it. It's not for everyone. You have to study. You have to do your research. You're someone who, and I respect you for this. It's not just fun and games for you. You have a strategy. You have a craft to it, and you stick to it. So we're going to get to that in a little bit. I do want to start with these NBA finals. We're 3 games in. The Celtics pretty much beat the brakes off of the Warriors for the most part outside of that third quarter in game 3. So the Celtics are up 2-1. If I had to pick an MVP through 3 games, I think it's Jaylen Brown. I think that's a fair assessment right now. Would you agree or disagree?
I'd say it's just too soon to even say that unless you're going to use it as part of a strategy to figure out who you want to pick for MVP. I think it's kind of wide open, Spence, because it's the series is 2-1. Even the guys like Steph Curry hasn't had a bad game, but his team's not winning. Jason Tatum has had a couple bad shooting games. He had a great assist game the night he couldn't shoot. All 3 of those guys, Smart, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum, had really, really strong games last night. And when the Celtics operate with a big 3, they're very good, especially when they're getting everything a lot offensively from them. So I wouldn't count out Marcus Smart by any means. He had 1 bad game. Klay Thompson has had 2 bad games. I wouldn't count him out if he starts playing hero ball and makes 6-7 threes like he's capable of. Draymond's probably played himself out of it, fouling out last night without doing much of other than taking a lot of abuse. But again, it's 2-1, so let's assume this thing goes 7. We still got a long way to go, and there's a lot of off days, man. There's a lot more coming, and this thing's not going to be decided until a week from Monday if it goes 7. So there's time for somebody to kind of step up and seize the MVP award. And I wouldn't really say anybody's the front runner right now. It's too wide open of a series.
I think that's fair. Have you hit any bets through 3 games of this finals?
Last night I had 2 prop bets. I had Steph Curry and Klay Thompson to both score 30 points. And you talked about my strategy. I put $10 on it because that's what I do. But I got it at 28-1. And to find a bet that's 28-1 that's got kind of a plausible possibility to come in, that's sort of how I look at gambling. There's 1 game, so you can find a 28-1 bet in there. How unlikely is it? Well, it turns out Steph Curry had 31 points and Klay Thompson had 25, so I missed by 5. And Klay missed 5 threes. He made 6, but he missed 5. So that wasn't far from hitting. Then the other one I had was Marcus Smart to have 20 points and 8 assists, and that one was at 18-1. And again, I put $10 on it, so I was looking to win either 180 or 280, or if I had hit them both, would have been a nice. I didn't parlay them, but it would have been a couple nice wins. Anyway, Smart comes up with 24 points, so he hits the points part, but he only had 5 assists. Again, Tatum led the team; he had 9. So, it is what it is. I don't play the spreads, and I don't play the over-unders. I'm not trying to rack up more wins than losses. What I do, Spence, is I try to hit something with long odds that the book thinks is quite unlikely, and I think that is more than plausible, but probably still unlikely.
Are there any props out for Game 4 right now? I know it's on Friday. It's Thursday night, so the game's tomorrow. But Have you seen anything in play for Game 4 that has caught your eye right now, Chris?
Well, I looked at the same ones I played, and the odds on both have gone down a little. Smart for 20 points and 8 assists is down to 12-1. If you think Smart can get 12 points, 8 assists, and 6 rebounds, that's 22-1. Um, he runs hot and cold, though. He may have another stinker game. He had 2 points in game 2, so I don't love that one. I think it'll hit at some point in the series because it usually does, but he's been doing those in game 7. So, and then the other one that I played was like I said, was 30 points each out of Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, and that's now down to 17-1. So from 28 to 17, that prop is down quite a bit. And here's one, I don't think this would hit, and I wouldn't play this, but it's not all that out of the question. If Draymond has a really big bounce back game, and they're forced to play Looney a lot more minutes, especially with Robert Williams playing the way he did. So Kevon Looney and Draymond Green for 12 rebounds each. You can get that at 40-1. And again, like I wouldn't take that, but I also wouldn't steer anyone away from it, saying, look, man, that's a 40-1 bet. And it's not that far out of the question. Just, like I wouldn't put $100 on it or anything, but take a flyer on it. And, if you pick out kind of a couple bets like that, when there's only one game on every 3 nights, you're not going to go broke gambling, and you're going to be rooting for something unlikely to happen, and that always keeps you a little more riveted watching the game.
No, I don't hate that at all. I mean, the Warriors don't have a lot of guys that can rebound. It's really just Draymond and Kevon Looney. I mean, Wiggins can get 10 on a given night. Bielitsa doesn't play a night.
He got 10 once during the regular season. Now he's done it 3 times during the playoffs, and most of that was in the last round. So,
right,
like Wiggins to get a double-double is kind of a good bet, but the ball has to sort of bounce his way. He's not in there battling for rebounds. He kind of gets him when they just kind of fall his way. But that being said, when he stepped up real big in the last series against Dallas, he was getting double-figure rebounds. So, he's a guy that the Warriors, I think, need a little more from that. That's sort of being lost in all the bluster over how it's all about Draymond, and Draymond had an awful game 3, but what's Draymond going to do better to play in game 4, and is he going to have to do a whole lot much more because Steph Curry says, hey, look, I'm definitely playing. Okay, that's one thing, but what percentage are you with that? The same foot got injured, so he could suck it up and play, but is he going to be 100% physically? We're probably just not going to know, but that's certainly troublesome and worrisome for the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah, it's a great point. You bring up the Steph injury. Al Horford basically fell on Steph's legs. You saw Steph screaming under that pile. He's going to give it a go in game 4. But from a gambling perspective, does that injury, non-injury, whatever, does that stop you from sort of taking any props on Steph moving forward?
Well, for one game at least, yeah. I unless the news out of there, leading up to game time is that he looks great, he feels great. They've given some sort of a definitive medical update from like a medical staff guy. This injury is not as serious as the last one because A, B, and C. So I would really be looking for the information over the course of the day tomorrow before I laid anything on Steph. But if I got a question mark in my mind, and I'm a gambler who wants to go out there and find something for a guy who's going to have to step up, then yeah, I would look at a guy like Andre Wiggins. Let me find you a Wiggins line. You talk for a second, and I'm going to find you a Wiggins line that it might be a little bit intriguing.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at some player props for points. I'm seeing a guy like Jordan Poole over 11.5. I mean, it's minus 125, but Poole has not really. He showed up in game 2. That was it. He's had 2 sort of duds for games. I gotta think he at least eclipses 11.5. I know it's not a big money bet, but that seems like a sure thing. If I can say so myself. And then you got these interesting bets, head to head, Al Horford versus Jordan Poole. Al Horford's plus 100 there. I don't hate that. Horford's been absolutely electric for 2 out of 3 games. Jaylen Brown and Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson's plus 160 in that head to head. Clay's coming off a really good game. Jaylen Brown's coming off a great game, but I don't know. For me, I feel like Clay can get it going, and Jaylen Brown's incredible. I don't think he's a 27 points per game incredible type of player, but those are two interesting head-to-head matchups that I'm looking at. What did you find for Andrew Wiggins?
Yeah, well, first on Brown, he had that fantastic first quarter, and I thought he would finish up in the 40s. But he'll do that every now and then. He's that good of a player. He's young and he's not doing it consistently. What I found for Wiggins is nothing really special. Wiggins and Marcus Smart to score 20 points each. That's 10-1. I don't think either of those things is going to necessarily happen. But Wiggins getting 20 is kind of a lot, unless the news is bad on Steph. And that line may drop a little bit from 10-1, but finding something. What I look is the combo player props, because as you said, looking at the single statistic player prop, it's an over under where you're at a minus 120 versus a plus 105. So
right,
like you can't make any money there. So why waste your time? And unless you're going to put it as part of a parlay where you're going to have to leg in some games from other sports. Again, that just doesn't fit my strategy. I get it that people are going to do it, but that's kind of not how I try to tackle this gambling game. I try to go after it with longer odds wagers and always the same bet. And I keep it real mellow with $10 bets.
So right now, and I respect it. I think that's a good strategy. That's a fun way to gamble, right? When we're talking about winning a bet minus 125, that's the boring way to gamble. That's the way I usually gamble, but to each his own. I'm looking at some interesting bets here. The points leader. So Curry right now is minus 2,000. I mean, he has absolutely dominated the series from a point standpoint. Would you look at Jason Tatum at plus 1,100 to potentially sneak up on Steph and be the points leader when this series is all said and done?
I'm not looking at their points per game average in the series. What is it?
I don't know. I have no idea off the top of my head. I know Tatum had that stinker, and Steph's basically been around 30. Yeah,
I'll get it. But let's give me another question while I look that up. I just got to wait for my computer to. I know exactly where to get that, and then I'll give you an answer. But let me ask you a question.
Yeah, hit me.
What do you think has to happen for Golden State? What can they do defensively against Boston? Because look, everybody talks about Boston's defense, but defense wins championships. So if you're Steve Kerr and you got to scheme something defensively, what are you looking to do?
It's an interesting question. Golden State's rim protection has been terrible. They have not done a good job of guarding the paint. Jaylen Brown and Tatum have been able to get to the rim with ease. And not only are they able to get to the rim, when they break down the Warriors defense, when the Warriors collapse on them, they're kicking it out to guys for wide open threes. You saw that in game 1. You saw that in game 3. So if I'm Steve Kerr, what I'm preaching is keep these guys in front of you. When Brown and Tatum have the ball on the perimeter, don't give them the 3, but don't let them drive past you, because that's where you're getting killed. And if they're going to drive past you, the Warriors have to do a better job on collapsing on the ball. They did that in game 2 where they turned Tatum and Brown over a lot. They did it in the first half of game 1. But when Tatum and Brown go to the rim, if they don't have anyone around them, I mean, they have their pick of the litter. They can lay it up. They can go to Robert Williams for the alley-oop, or they can kick it out for 3. If I'm Kerr, I'm stressing you guys need to do a better job of protecting the rim, of collapsing in the paint. And you got to hope that some of those guys are going to miss those 3s. They missed him in game 2. They didn't quite miss him in game 3. But you need to do a better job of protecting the paint. And that's the one thing that's been bothering me. I just think, when the Warriors' best defender is Draymond Green, for the most part, and he's playing undisciplined defense, he's letting Brown get by him, he's fouling on every other possession, he's your leader on defense. You don't see that on the other side with Marcus Smart. Marcus Smart sets the tone for the defense. He is the toughest guy on the court. So in a lot of ways, to me, when I look at the defensive woes for the Warriors, I blame Draymond Green.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with anything you said. I don't know that you could put it quite so much on one guy, but the one thing key to beating the Celtics, every time they lose, they have a ton of turnovers. So you got to get them to turn the ball over. And, you find if the guys that are out, you might have to find one guy, like maybe an Otto Porter, who's shooting the ball great, who's a good defender as well, who can help you get a few more deflections and steals and transitional buckets off of turnovers, because you got to turn the Celtics over in order to win. Every team that's done it has beaten them in this year's playoffs. That's why they've been 7 a couple times. And that would be the focus for me if I'm Golden State. How do we get them to turn the ball over? But like you said, the rim protection, it is what it is. They don't have Wiseman, so they got to play Looney a lot, and they don't really have anybody else big. And Draymond's, not a shot blocker. He's an on-the-ball defender. And you're right. He didn't have all that much luck against Jaylen. But back to your questions. Here's what we got. What are the odds on both Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum to finish as a series high scorer?
So we had, let's take a look here. We had
you said Curry was minus 2,000.
Curry's minus 2,000. Tatum is plus 1,100, and Jaylen Brown is plus 2,200.
All right, well, that's interesting because Jaylen Brown's averaging 22.7, so he's trailing Curry by 8.6 points per game. So what would have to happen is Curry would have to have, let's say his foot, acts up in the first quarter tomorrow night, and he plays, but he scores 1 point. All right, that's going to, really drop his average down, where he's now in the mid-20s, the low to mid-20s. Well, then now he's really within reach. So, I wouldn't say it's the worst flyer bet to put money on both Brown and Tatum, but what you're going to need is for Curry to have a game where he doesn't score, and he almost never has those games. But injuries being what they are, that could actually happen, and then it becomes points scored divided by 4 rather than points scored divided by 3, which is what we have now. And he's got 94 points in 3 games. That averages out at 31.3. If he gets 1 point, or let's say he gets 6 points, then he's got 100 points in 4 games, and his average is down to 25. Well, then Brown's not far behind him because Brown's at 22.7 and Tatum is at 22.0. So if you're going to make that bet, take both the Celtics guys. Those are the only 2 guys that can catch him.
No, 100%. I think that's extremely smart.
I'm curious, though, what's Klay Thompson?
Klay Thompson is plus 20,000.
Yeah, it should be higher. But he's at 17. He's at 17 points per game, and he'd have to have like a 50-point game to get in that argument. But anyway, it's the finals. You really know what you're going to see. And look, Klay did have his shot back last night, and they went to him, and that was a big part of the third quarter comeback. And quite frankly, the fourth quarter collapse came early in that quarter, and Steph kept turning the ball over. So Steph, I don't want to say he was rattled last night, but he was not the best Steph. And every time he turned it over on, I think it was 2 or 3 possessions early in the fourth quarter, Boston scored off those plays. So that's where the game really got away from him early in the fourth. And, that's going to happen. And, one other thing, because you like playing in-game gambling, Boston's a terrible third quarter team, man. I wonder in game 4, no matter what the score is, whether Golden State is favored to win the third quarter and win it by a bunch, because that's sort of the historical thing that's been going on. So, if you think that's going to snap and break and Boston can actually outscore Golden State and have one good third quarter, you might be able to get the Celtics at 5-1 on that just to play the third quarter only. I would watch for that tomorrow night, Friday night at game 4.
No, that's not a bad bet. I like that idea. This is kind of like a half basketball, half gambling question, but I look at a lot of the role players for the Celtics and the Warriors, and we'll start with the basketball side of things. It seems like the Celtics role players and Al Horford, Derek White, Robert Williams is the 4th best guy on the team, so I would say he's a role player at this point. Peyton Pritchard. It seems like those role players have been outplaying the Warriors role players, right? In Poole, Gary Payton II, Bielitsa, Kayvon Looney. So my question to you is, A, do you think that the Celtics have better role players than the Warriors? And B, if you're going to bet on any of those guys' performances, does home court influence you? Because I know a lot of the times the experts will say the role players really only play well at home. So we can start with the basketball side of things. And in your opinion, do you think the Celtics role players have been better, and why has that been the case?
I think they've been better, yeah, and it's just been they've performed. Peyton Pritchard and Derek White have really stepped up, and they have it in them, and they're rising to the occasion. Jordan Poole's been a pretty damn good player throughout the playoffs, but look, he's tailed off in the third and fourth rounds, and they got a decent game out of him in game 2, but he hasn't had the other 2 games he wasn't all that good. They got to find somebody, Spence, that's going to give him more, and that's why I brought up Otto Porter before. He keeps nailing threes at a high percentage, and he can defend. Why not find a spot out there for him to maybe use him the way you had originally envisioned using Andre Iguodala? Try something. And because Steve Kerr doesn't really have much to choose from on his bench in terms of guys who've been giving him something, Bielitsa gives him nothing. Try somebody new and stick with him for a longer period of time than what you've been doing. So if you're going to go with that as your sort of operational gambling thought, then, the lines on Pritchard and White for points scored and assists and combined points, assists, and rebound, they're probably going to be high. And but for a guy like Otto Porter, it's probably going to be low. And if you take a couple overs and if you're able on your book to parlay them, maybe you can put some Otto Porter overs together. With another guy that you think is just going to be hot, and or a guy you think is going to be cold for that matter. But again, if you parlay together 3 or 4 player props on over unders, you can put together a nice. They don't have to all be unlikely, and you can still get 10-1 on something like that.
Interesting. I'm looking at one other thing now. This I love this too. Highest scoring performance. Right. So right now, Curry is minus 160 because I think he scored, was his 31 last game is more than any player so far. Right.
I'd have to go back and look, but it seems like that it's something in the 30s.
It's something in the 30s.
Nobody's had a ferocious game yet.
Right. So Tatum's at plus 225. Jaylen Brown is at plus 475. And Klay Thompson's at plus 2200. So all we're talking about is one of these guys has to score the most points in a single game in the series. If you had to pick one of those 3 guys, Tatum, Brown, or Thompson, to pop off. And by the way, Jordan Poole, who is more than capable of doing that, he's plus 9,000. Wiggins is plus 6,500, and Marcus Smart is plus 15,000. If you had to take one of those bets, who do you think you would bet on to be the high scorer in a single game for the finals?
Well, there's only really 4 guys that can give you 30. There's Curry, Thompson, and Brown and Tatum. Smart just doesn't get into the 30s. Like he'd have to go crazy nuts. And Poole did early in the playoffs, but he's not stroking it. So out of the odds you gave me, I'd just go with Thompson on that one because he's capable of getting like 36, 37 if a couple more of his 3-pointers drop. He's such a high volume 3-point shooter. If the guy's going to be out there shooting 11 or 12 threes and he has a hot night where he hits 8 of them, well then, bang, that's 24 points right off the bat there. So can he find 10, 12 points somewhere else? Now he's at 36. If he finds 14, 16, now he's at 38, 40. And again, with 4 games coming up, there's a chance for really anybody to do it. But look historically at who's able to who has been able to give you 30 in the past, and then the really limited role that both teams give to their to anybody beyond Golden State's big 2 and Boston's big 3. But even that big 3, Smart's not going to, Smart I don't think is going to have a 35, 36 point game. But look, if I'm making that bet, it's going to be on Klay Thompson, and then maybe I just hedge it a little in case the next longest guy somehow does it. And then in that case, go with Smart because you said he was 90-1, right?
Yeah, Smart was, I believe, plus 1,500, 15,000, and Klay was plus 2,200.
Oh, so he's 150-1.
Yeah.
I mean, what the hell? Like,
what the hell? Why not? Right? $10, it's nothing. Bet.
Right. Well, that would be a $20 bet, 10 on Thompson and then 10 on the other guy. But I don't expect that 20 to win. But again, at those odds, if a Smart just goes ballistic, I got him at 150-1 to have the highest scoring game in the series. I'm watching that game with a little extra focus.
No, I'm with you. You brought up, playing Otto Porter Jr. a little bit more. If you're Steve Kerr at this point, you're down 2-1. Are you making any lineup adjustments for game 4, or are you sticking with what you know?
You're sticking with what you know, but at the same time, if you got a hot hand, you probably ride it a little bit harder, and you probably go looking for a guy. Um, you're going to start with the same rotation, but over the course of the second and the third quarters, you're going to ascertain whether somebody is outperforming what you expected. And in that case, it's on you to find a way to keep that guy in and put him alongside players that are going to, not maybe they don't normally play each other, but they're not going to hinder each other because they're not a rotation that's usually out on the floor. And basically NBA players can play with anybody, but at the same time, if you're a team that's locked into certain rotations and different guys almost always play with the same combination of players, that can make it a little more tricky when you try to change on the fly late in the playoffs, like here we are in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Some kind of kooky bets towards the end of this episode. We have buzzer beaters in the series, a field goal to give team the win as time expires, plus 2,200 for yes. You think we're going to see any buzzer beaters in this series, Chris?
What side are you seeing that on?
I'm seeing that on DraftKings.
Hey, man, that's another one. Like, when you like root for good games, that has to be a buzzer beater where there can't even be 1/10 of a second left on the clock. So the odds should probably be a little bit higher. But Jason Tatum did it in game 1 against Brooklyn, and like that won the series for the Celtics. So it just doesn't happen all that often, but it does happen where the game is won at the buzzer on a last play because it's a one possession game, and with 4 seconds left, and they're coming out of a timeout. So like it's not the hardest thing to imagine. We've seen so little of that in the playoffs, especially over the last 2 rounds. These games are just not are not tight. They're back and forth occasionally, but basically one team is way better than the other team almost every night, and that's been the case for 2 rounds now. So it it's one of those fun bets. What the hell? If this thing goes down to the last shot and somebody hits it, I get 22-1. A lot of people like to bet on who's going to make the first shot, but you're not going to see 22-1 there. So
right. Yeah,
why not play the opposite end, and makes you pay attention through the whole game.
And then this final one I really like. Will there be at least one comeback win from 20 plus points behind in the 2022 NBA Finals? Yes is plus 1,300.
Yeah, I wouldn't touch that.
Really?
You don't get the value. 1,300, like somebody could do it, yeah, but you're only getting 13-1. No, there's no value there. It's an unlikely thing without a great price on it.
All right, and finally, over under for the rest of the series, 8 Mike Breen bangs.
Oh, that's way over.
Yeah. I made that up, by the way.
Might have 8 on Friday.
That was a stat line I just totally, or a gambling line I just totally made up. Yeah. He only gets like, what, 2 to 3 bangs a game?
Yeah, but there's we're only in game 3. He gets all juiced up, man. That number's going to be like, I'll put that number at about 14 for the rest of the series.
All right, my final question. I mean, I know you don't like to pick lines and spreads of the games, but who do you think wins this series? I know when we talked a week ago, you said Golden State. Now you've watched 3 games. Celtics are up 2-1. What is your prediction for the rest of this series?
I got to stick with the team that I have said I think is going to win, and that's Golden State, and I think experience will eventually win out. But I haven't liked a lot of what I've seen from them. The not continuing to ride Curry in the second quarter in game 1, I think was a terrible early mistake. Game 2, of course, they were great, but then last night the total kind of emotional collapse and all the bad stuff that happened in the fourth quarter to them, and Draymond being really bad and really rattled. All those things kind of bode poorly for the Warriors. Can they bounce back from that? This is not Memphis. This is Boston, and the fans kind of showed how tough they can be last night. This is a gut check now for the Warriors, but I still like them. They always win a game on the road. I think it's just imperative that they make that game 4 on Friday night or this thing is, in a place that they never thought it would be. They would be down 3-1 and needed to win 3 in a row, which they're certainly capable of. But this is an extremely important game 4 for the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah, the way I see it, I look at the team's demeanor after they lose, and they don't look broken. I mean, you hear Curry, you hear Draymond, you hear Clay talk, and they have a lot of faith in what they do. I think if you saw a Memphis or a Phoenix in this series and they were down 2-1 and they had just got beaten up in that game 3, I don't think they're approaching the post-game press conference the same way. But you hear the way the Warriors talk. They've been here before. They know what it's like to be down. They were down 2-1 in 2015. I'll bet that was 7 years ago. But these are 3-time champions we're talking about. These guys are not too small for the moment. They understand it. And I just hearing the press conference after both the game 1 loss and the game 3 loss, I just have a lot of faith that they're going to figure this thing out and potentially win in, if not 6-7 games.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they've won a lot of playoff games over the course of their careers, but they've also lost a lot of playoff games over the course of their careers.
True.
So they're not going to get too low off of one loss. It's all, the NBA playoffs is all about putting whatever game just happened in your rearview mirror and forgetting about it. It's all about the next game. Whatever the score of the series is, whatever it is, but if there's still a game coming up, that's where your focus really has to be. And teams that haven't been in the playoffs, that all that many times, they tend to let that stuff kind of linger in their heads, and they're still thinking back about what happened last game. Last game's over. There's no change in it. So move ahead and put all your focus on the next game. The veterans in the NBA always learn how to do that. And certainly I think some of the nonchalance even that you're seeing out of the Warriors in these news conference and off-day interviews comes from that. They've lost playoff games before, and they know that one loss is not the end of the world.
No, I think that's a fair assessment. Chris, thank you so much for coming on 2 Hours No Traffic, brought to you by Sideline Sports. Where can people find you on Twitter?
You can find me on Sheridan Hoops. One word, Sheridan Hoops. And I'm writing for about 3 different places right now, and I do a little gambling and I do a little featurey stuff, and we'll see where I end up next season and where I end up this summer. There's some good international basketball going on this summer, and I really like covering that. So I may end up in Malaga, Spain for the under 17s. These are guys that are going to be drafted in 3 or 4 years, and these competitions like that are just really crazy good, and you get to see the next generation of players. So you may see me covering a little bit of international basketball this summer. So I appreciate everybody who does follow me on Sheridan Hoops and gets back to me that way.
There you go. That's why you're the expert and I'm the amateur. Thank you so much for coming on, Chris.
You do a good show, Spence. Don't be so hard on yourself.